Now we'll turn for questions. I'll begin. We'll go for 5 minutes on questions. We'll probably go a round or two per panel. For our three panelists here, I'd like to get your thoughts on some information the committee gathered about the economics of rescissions for insurance companies. The three CEOs who will testify after you have all made the case that their companies use rescission as a tool to rule out fraud by those who apply for coverage. But at the same time, we find these companies have also reported savings in estimated $300 million as a result of the rescissions from 2003 to 2007. That doesn't include all their subsidiaries and doesn't include all their files, but what we have, that's what we've come up with. And like I said, this figure doesn't include the savings gain by avoiding future medical costs of rescinded policyholders. So let me ask each of you, do you believe that the insurance companies use rescissions primarily as a fraud prevention tool or as a cost savings instrument that will help them boost their corporate profits? Ms. Horton?
I think it's all about the money.
Ms. Raditz?
It is absolutely about the money.
Ms. Baton?
Absolutely. Until you try to use it, they'll just keep on taking your money.
Well, each of you, as I've listened to your testimony, Ms. Baton, you were an RN, Ms. Raditz, you're an attorney, and Ms. Horton, you had family members who were in the medical field, radiologists. You seem like a little bit more, he had access to people who could help you on this. What happens in your groups and people you've talked to? What happens to people who don't have that kind of support mechanisms within their family? What happens to them? Ms. Horton?
They fall through the cracks. You know, there's nothing, even having radiologists in my family, you know, I didn't have the opportunity to consult them before filling out the application. They live cross country, they have children, they work all the time, you know, and I don't know what those people would do.
Ms. Raditz?
As I stated in my testimony, my brother was very fortunate because of the fact that I have education and I know lots of people. And even all the attorneys that I know and judges who I went to ask for help did not know what to do in the situation other than go through the court system. Unfortunately, when you have cancer or you're in a position where your life is shortened to a matter of months, you can't go through the court system because you don't have the time to do that. So, and what do people do? They do, many people throughout the United States do nothing because they don't have the ways or the means or the knowledge to take the steps necessary. They don't know all the I know hundreds of attorneys. I've been practicing a lengthy period of time. They don't know all those people I know. So what do? They get the letter, and they don't get the treatment that they need, and many of these people die, and they think that's the way it's supposed to be because they just don't know what to do. And I believe, honestly, that the insurance companies depend upon that lack of knowledge and lack of laws, federal laws in place, and that's one of the ways that they encourage their profits.
Ms. Baton, you want to add anything on it?
I was going to say that a lot of people in my cancer group, they get letters like this, they just give up, they fade away, and they die.
Well, you were fortunate, Ms. Baton. You had a ranking member here, Mr. Congressman Barton, who intervened, or else you might not be with us here today. Was it clear to you in dealing with the insurance company that if you didn't have a U.S. congressman working on your behalf that your insurance wouldn't have been reinstated?
There's not a doubt in the world that they wouldn't have even given me a blink of an eye if it hadn't been for him. And I just could never tell you how he worked. If you only knew how many hours he worked. They called me every day just working hours and hours and hours. This took a long time. This was like a month, many months process. This wasn't just happening overnight. So for them, his office to take that kind of a dedication to me, you know, I'll be forever grateful. If I live and don't die of cancer, you know, I said it'll be because of them. So only because of my congressman, only because of him did I get help for my cancer. If it wasn't for that, it never would have happened.
Ms. Raditz, sort of parallel to Ms. Baton there, in your brother's case, the Illinois Attorney General office and Dr. Babs Walden intervened and actually had to write 2 letters to the insurance company. In fact, one of them was tab number 4. We got on the document binder there if you care to look at it. But the Attorney General's office wrote, and I quote, "I find the behavior on the part of Fortis Health to be extremely troubling, if not unethical. Clearly, there is no justification for rescinding this gentleman's insurance beyond avoiding the cost of his future treatment. To rescind, terminate his policy at this point is not only devastating, but probably fatal to Mr. Raditz. And then in the second letter, the company finally reversed its decision. So how did your brother know to enlist the assistance of the Attorney General? Is that through you?
Yes, it was absolutely through myself. And like I said, even I had difficulty in finding that outlet. It took me a while to get to the Attorney General's office. But we're fortunate in the state of Illinois to have a health bureau in our Lisa Madigan's Attorney General's office. We're very, very lucky to have an aggressive unit, and they are available for the citizens of the state of Illinois who go through the same situation that my brother did. But again, most people, do not have the knowledge that I have. And by the way, it took 2 appeals to them. The first time she wrote the letter, they said no. So it took a further letter to them before that they did, reverse their decision.
Thank you. Mr. Barton for questions?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
No, it's Mr. Barton's turn unless he wants to yield you time.
I'll be happy.
It's just purely a technical question. As a doctor, I get nervous with so many lawyers around me. There's an active class
You
action.
should feel secure.
No, it's less than secure. It's the opposite of secure. There's, as I understand, there's an active class action suit. One of the witnesses before us this
In
morning.
California, I believe it's been going on for some time. I think Ms. Horton is maybe a plaintiff in that action.
Well, the speech and debate clause notwithstanding, are we subjecting ourselves to possible subpoena in that to testify in that court by our questions here today or our opening statements here today?
No, but if you wish to, we could arrange it.
No, I don't want a trip to California. It's the last thing I want. But again,
No, I think we're okay. We're not asking anything about the
we're okay?
nitty-gritty
I
of
mean,
the lawsuit or anything like that. This is a committee investigation, and we'd be exempt.
Can counsel answer that question for us?
Either when you care to comment on it. We are in official setting. This is official hearing of the U.S. Congress. Speech and debate protection certainly helps us, but I don't think any of us are going to ask about the class action suit. Yeah, speech and debate clause certainly
Okay,
applies.
I thank the chairman.
Okay, Mr. Barton, questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank each of the 3 witnesses. And I want to make a comment on what Ms. Baton said about myself. There are 435 congressmen, and every one of us, our job is to help constituents. I have 4 full-time caseworkers. Mr. Wright to my left here, Mr. Wright to my left, was my district director at the time. I had, Christy and Deborah and Jody and Ron and Linda Gillespie, all of them intervened for you. I came in at the very end and talked to the president, but not just myself, but every member of Congress. We helped hundreds and sometimes thousands of people every year. Your case just happened to be life and death, and we put a lot of extra effort into it because we knew how important it was to get you health care as quickly as possible. But it's not just me, it's every member of Congress that tries to serve our constituents. My first question will be to the gentlelady down to the far right. You said that your application, they asked several questions several different ways, and they were very tricky. Is it your understanding that that's a standard practice in the individual insurance markets? Do they start out with the intention of setting you up so that later on they may disqualify you? Is that your opinion?
Yes, that's my opinion. I believe that they ask you the same question several times so that if you disclose it in one area and then don't realize that you need to disclose it again, that they can somehow say then that you have, committed fraud.
Are you aware, since your lawsuit, if they've made some changes to that?
I believe that was one of the things they were trying to negotiate with Blue Cross, was changing the application, but I don't know what the status of it is.
Okay. My next question is to the gentlelady there in the middle. Your brother, has he had his stem cell transplant?
He did indeed receive the stem cell transplant. It was extremely successful. It extended his life approximately 3.5 years. He did pass away January 6th of 2009, and he was about to have a second stem cell transplant. Unfortunately, due to certain situations, his donor became ill at the last minute, and so he did pass away on January 6th, but again, it extended his life nearly 3.5 years, and at his age, each day meant everything to him, and each day that we had him was wonderful. And my daughter, who's behind me, and I, and his wife, and his other brother, Richard, we spent the last 30 days, every single day with him at his side. And like I say, there couldn't be any better memorial to my brother than what this committee is doing, because life is so precious. And in spending those last moments of his life with him for 30 days, at the end, we realize how important this work you're doing is, and we just want to say again from our family, thank you all so much. We know with Mr. Gordon here that you've been working round the clock 7 days a week and very, very hard. And Mr. Gordon, thank you and your staff for all your hard work. Thank you.
Ms. Baton, what have your doctors told you your condition would have been had you had the mastectomy immediately as originally scheduled? Would you have had to undergo the chemotherapy, and is it probable that the cancer would have spread to the lymph nodes as it apparently has?
They said that every day that I put off the surgery was a really, a day that the cells just multiplied and grew. And I think there was a strong chance that in the beginning that maybe I didn't have to have I could have had a lesser surgery and not have had my lymph nodes taken out. I would have had to have chemo, but maybe not for quite as long a period of time.
Okay. Well, if it's personal, it is personal, you don't have to tell us, but would you tell us as much as you can about your prognosis right now? Is the expectation positive for your chemotherapy and cancer remission, or is it still up in the air?
It's still up in the air.
Still up in the air. Well, Mr. Chairman, my time's about expired. I'm going to yield back. I think I speak for every member of the committee on both sides of the aisle. We want to hear from the insurance companies in the next panel, but it is clear that if, in fact, there is a practice of going in after the fact and canceling policies on technicalities, we've got to do whatever is possible to prevent that. I mean, I think a company does have the right to make sure that there's no fraudulent information. But it's obvious to me, I'll guarantee you in Ms. Baton's case, there was no fraud intended. And I'm convinced in the other two witnesses that they were being truthful and honest also. And if a citizen acts in good faith, we should expect the insurance companies that take their money to act in good faith also. And I will tell you, Ms. Baton, we will monitor your case, and we will stay in touch with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas. And so long as you do what you're supposed to do, I'll guarantee you they'll do what they're supposed to do. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Ms. Schakowsky for questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And after hearing the testimony, I want to even thank the witnesses more for sharing this. I wanted to talk about rescissions for unrelated medical conditions. I understand that they scour the records to find anything. But, Ms. Baton, let me understand what happened to you. After your insurance policy began, you developed breast cancer. And the insurance company decided to investigate your application, but it didn't find any evidence that you had breast anything before you got your policy, did it? So it was rescinded because essentially of pimples, right? Is that what you're saying?
They rescinded because, there's what it all started was a red flag. What that means is something suspicious. So they red flag you. Then they go back and they just cut your chart apart. And what they found was on my weight, I think I put down, I said, what woman's going to tell you what she really weighs? I weighed more than what I put down. And they said that they might not have given me a policy because I was overweight. And then the second thing was I had in my earlier years, I had a previous fast beating of my heart. And I didn't have a problem with that anymore. But anyway, that was brought up. Everything they could possibly dig up in my whole life history got brought up, unrelated to the cancer. Nothing related to the cancer.
So if we lie about our weight at all, we better look out, huh?
They'll get you.
Uh-oh, I better change my driver's license or something. And Ms. Radis, it sounds like your brother had a similar experience. He signed up for an insurance policy, then was stricken with aggressive form of lymphoma, and the insurance company, which is now part of Assurant, investigated his application, but it didn't find any evidence that your brother had cancer before his insurance policy, right?
That's correct.
So
Did not have cancer prior to, at the time he signed up, he did not have cancer.
So it rescinded his policy based on an alleged misstatement about gallstones and you said a small, did aneurysm or a weak, which is what, a weak blood vessel, right? Does that have anything to do with that? Anything?
Nothing whatsoever.
And
The gallstones, actually, like I said, he never even knew he had gallstones. He actually wrote down he had kidney stones and was treated for kidney stones. So when he got that letter, he thought that was an error. Oh, they must have meant the kidney stones. But he disclosed that he did have kidney stones, and they knew that when they gave him the insurance. He never knew he had minor gallstones. Never to his death was ever treated for any gallstones and was never treated for any aneurysm.
So in addition then to having an unrelated medical condition, it was something he didn't know about at all. So when we hear, perhaps we will, about fraud from the insurance companies, he even mentioned kidney stones that he didn't have, are you saying?
He did have kidney stones,
okay.
and he did disclose those and was treated for those. And he was given insurance despite the fact that he had kidney stones. But had they not been able to find his doctor, who was retired and on a fishing trip in another state, they still might not have believed him because he had no knowledge of it. Luckily, they were able to find the doctor who was able to say, oh, yes, I never discussed those issues with him. I never treated him for those. They were very minor, and they appeared on a CT scan, but we never engaged in any treatment for those whatsoever, and I never disclosed them to the...
But ultimately, even that, didn't it take the Attorney General to get it changed?
Oh, yes, it did. It absolutely did. Like I said, Lisa Madigan's the Attorney General's office, and Dr. Babs Wildman were wonderful, and their staff were just incredible. They were working daily on this file because they knew that the clock was ticking every day, and their investigations were...
But what I'm asking is, even if they found the doctor on the fishing trip and the doctor had said what he thought, that wasn't enough, apparently.
It wasn't. At that point, they still wrote a letter saying, no, too bad. It was a material lack of disclosure. And then Dr. Wildman had to contact them again and discuss it further.
And Ms. Horton, your situation is that you were your policy was rescinded because you were seeking some insurance coverage, or how did that work for you? Is it on? Is it
Turn on your mic, please.
there?
It's green. Can you not hear me? Okay. I was seeking the policy when I was going over from a group health insurance.
So this was just a denial from the beginning because of...
I was accepted, and then the first time I went to see a doctor, I received a letter from Blue Cross stating that they wanted all of my medical records. And it was a bill for just routine blood work. It was to test my T4 level, which is your thyroid hormone. And so it was routine blood work that anyone who has an underactive thyroid, which I disclosed, would get. And I had paid almost 3 times more in premiums than they needed to pay out. And they still sent me to this, post-claims underwriting department where they went through my medical records. They found, a mention of something in her notes that she never disclosed to me. And both of my doctors wrote letters in support of the fact that they had not discussed this condition with me, that they suspected I had, but could not prove. And
So we know that it seems obvious that anything that might relate to cancer treatment, they're going to scour the records. In your case, it might have been something about the blood work that you were having?
In my case, it just proves that there's no condition too small that they're willing to send you to this department for. I did not have anything even close to life-threatening nor as expensive as some of the people on the panel. And it just shows you that you can't be too young or you can't be too healthy for them to send you to this department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Burgess for questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Baden, let me ask you, Blue Cross and Blue Shield came back to you after finding out you needed the surgery and said that they were taking your insurance, and the date of rescission was dated back to the date of enactment of the insurance. Is that correct?
I'm kind of hard of hearing.
But the rescission was effective on 12/07, which was the date that the insurance was initiated. Is that correct?
Right. They gave me back all my premiums.
Oh, okay. That was going to be my question.
Yes,
They refunded the.
I never cashed the check because Mr. Barton told me never to cash it, and I never did. But they rescinded all my money back to the day that they said that. In other words, in simple language, they wanted nothing to do with me. They gave me back every penny that I'd ever given them, and that considered never being insured by them.
I see. And Ms. Raditz, what about in your brother's situation? Was there a refund of premium back to the date of the rescission?
Yes, they didn't actually get to that point, but because it got resolved before they refunded the money, but they sent a letter stating, yes, you are rescinded to the date of the original contract, which was before my brother had any cancer treatments at all, and $200,000 back. So my brother would have had to pay out of pocket over $200,000 in medical expenses.
But they never got to the point where they sought that refund from your brother.
Well, again, the $200,000 was the amount that his medical bills.
Okay, so those were subsequent bills.
Right, that would have been what he would have had to pay out because they were rescinding their contract. And so they were then stating, we're rescinding all the way back to the original date of the contract, so you've never had any insurance at all for the entire time you've had cancer. You now have no insurance.
So that was actually, that retroactive pronouncement also dealt with the money that they had used to pay for his cancer treatment to date. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, in your brother's situation also, I think you said that he was told he would have to have a certain sum of money or he couldn't get the bone marrow transplant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, but that wasn't the insurance company that told him that. That was the medical facility?
That was the hospital coordinator when I called to literally beg her to schedule the stem cell transplant because my brother was on pins and needles, being ill, going through aggressive chemotherapy and readying himself for this transplant, which is a long step-by-step procedure medically. Then they wouldn't schedule him because the insurance company said he's no longer insured, so we will not schedule you for your stem cell transplant that you were supposed to have within the next 3 weeks. We will not schedule you. So I got on the phone and literally begged her, and no.
Let me ask you a question. It doesn't really have to do with the subject of the hearing today, but it figures into the larger discussion that we're having. Was any other plan delineated for you then that another option you might have would be medical school at Northwestern or Cook County, or were there any other options?
No, there really
discussed?
weren't, because my brother's doctor was one of the most renowned doctors in the whole world on this specific routine of treatment, and he had a very specific type of cancer that really had to be treated by that doctor in that hospital at that time. And you can't just say, well, okay, you can have it a couple months down the road, or you can wait. I mean, and again, the Attorney General's office realized, thankfully, because it's headed by a doctor, a medical doctor, that time was of the essence.
It's just, I can recall multiple times when I was in practice, you come up on these situations and you find a way to make it work for the patient. I guess I'm a little frustrated in your situation, and in your situation is that you were essentially allowed or offered no other option. I appreciate the fact that particularly for that type of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that there may require very, very specialized type of care. My frustration is, as a physician, I just cannot tell you the times that I found another hospital or another way to make it happen and not wait the lengths of time that you all are discussing. And Ms. Beaton, in Tarrant County, I mean, there's a county hospital. There is did anyone ever try to help you through that tangle to try to get any care through John Peter Smith?
I couldn't qualify for that, but what I did do is I moved in with my sister in Cedar Hill for a while so I could declare residency, and went to Parkland Hospital, the Dallas County Hospital, tried to get help there. You get on a waiting list for a mastectomy, and 3 or 4 times I went there, and they lost my medical records. They said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I'm here. I have cancer. I need to get a mastectomy." They said, "We'll put you on the waiting list." Well, I do believe with all my heart that today my name still wouldn't be up on the waiting list, because they never even contacted me back. But I'm thankful to say that in trying to get help, like you said, going to all the county hospitals, applying for the state programs, doing all that kind of stuff, Mr. Barton got my insurance reinstated, and I was able to have insurance with the original doctor who I wanted to have insurance with.
Sure, and I appreciate that. And I think that's I believe in continuity of care, and I believe that's important. And again, the other aspect is not really a part of our discussion today, but it is part of our broader discussion as we talk about strategies for the future. I want to thank every one of our panelists for being here today. Ms. Horton, I didn't get to you. It's not because I was afraid to get to you. I just didn't have an opportunity. But thank you, too, for your testimony as well. It was all very important today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Mr. Gingrey for questions, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I'm going to direct my question to Ms. Beaton. Am I pronouncing that right, Ms.?
It doesn't matter, Beaton.
Beaton, Ms. Beaton.
Hard name.
Ms. Beaton, we, of course, heard and listened very intensely to your testimony, and quite compelling. And I wanted to take one quote from your written testimony. And I think you said, when you get on a waiting list, cancer grows. And I think that was in reference to the fact, as you just testified to Dr. Burgess, that you were on that waiting list at the county hospital. There was an alternative, but thank God that your congressman and my colleague Joe Barton was able to intervene, and you were able to get the care at the private hospital and by your physician that you trusted and that you wanted to do the surgery. And this statement that you made is absolutely right. I don't know if you know it, but I'm a physician too, an OBGYN doctor before being elected to Congress, and your statement is a profound one indeed. When you get on a waiting list, cancer grows. And when we look at statistics of countries where you routinely get put on a waiting list, like the UK and others, in particular in the treatment of breast cancer, in our country, where hopefully you don't get put on a waiting list when you've got breast cancer, you get operated on quickly, the 5-year overall survival rate for breast cancer is 98%. But in the UK system, where you frequently get put on a waiting list, the 5-year survival rate for breast cancer is 78%. That is a significant change. And as you described to us, that 2-centimeter mass grew to 7 centimeters, and lo and behold, you had to have your lymph nodes removed, and I guess some of those were positive by the time you finally got operated on. Is that the case?
Yes.
Well, let me, with that information, let me just ask you this question, and it relates to you in particular, but it relates to everybody in general. And I'd appreciate your thoughts on ways that you think that we can strengthen the private market so that other people, anyone with chronic illness, can find affordable health insurance, or do you think we should turn over our health care system lock, stock, and barrel to the compassion and efficiency of our federal bureaucracy?
Me. All I can say is that I did go many different places trying to get help, and I spent hours and quit working and did all my focusing on, instead of focusing on getting well and focusing on my cancer, I focused on trying to get treatment. And I went to every hospital in Dallas. I went to county hospitals. I went to Fort Worth. I went everywhere. And I don't know how to fix it, but all I know is there's something terribly wrong with the healthcare system, because when you go to big hospitals and there's so many people there waiting for help. In other words, I went to all the clinics. I sat with all the people that I just, you can't even imagine how many people are there waiting for help. You spend hours and hours. You probably spend the whole day trying to see a doctor. I did that. I did that for weeks and never got help. So, and the bad thing about that is when you go to different hospitals, they give you different opinions. Every time I went to a different hospital, my tumor was a different size. Every time I went to another hospital, one person wanted to do one thing, one person wanted to do another. You get a difference in diagnosis, a difference in treatment plans. So who do you listen to? Who do you know to listen to? And I don't know how to fix it, but all I know is when you have to go through this, and like every one of us has been through what we've been through, you just realize that it's something that's broken.
Ms. Baton, I'm going to reclaim my time because I've just got a few seconds left, but I really thank you for that testimony, and I think you're absolutely right. There is something that needs to be fixed. Something is broken. And when we hear from this second panel, from the insurance companies, I'm going to make some suggestions to them how we can fix this system. But it is my firm belief, Ms. Baton, the other two, Ms. Horton, Ms. Raditz, that we can fix this system without, as I say, turning it over lock, stock, and barrel to a federal bureaucracy that routinely is going to ration and put people on the waiting list. But we'll get into that later, and I want to thank all three of you for being here today and giving us such compelling testimony.
So you go to Mr. Walden, but please don't accept Mr. Gingree's description of a possible health care plan for the nation based upon those comments. Some of us on the air side see it a little differently. But Mr. Walden, for questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. I had to step out to another hearing I'm involved in upstairs, but I read your testimony this morning, and so I appreciate what you've been through, although none of us can really understand what it's like to be in your shoes or that of your loved ones. It's not a good thing. And so I want to thank, we had two physicians here, both Dr. Gingrey and my colleague from Texas, Dr. Burgess, and I think that's good to have. I hope at some point, given CMS's role in overseeing HIPAA, that perhaps we could have the federal agency that also has a role in this to come before our subcommittee as well to find out their take on what's happening. Ms. Horton, you stated that you think the applications are deliberately confusing. I've looked through some of those, and I understand what you mean. But could you be a little more specific, the kinds of questions that you found difficult and confusing?
I haven't looked at the application in 4 years since I first filled it out, so I can't be super specific, but I do remember them, you know, after looking at it again with my sister and my brother-in-law, they both said you'd have to be a doctor or a lawyer in order to figure out the application and fill it out to 100% accuracy.
Yeah. How would each of you improve that application process? Because it seems to me like that's kind of the crux of the argument here is there are things that you didn't know that were on your medical records, your loved one's medical records, that they didn't know. I don't know how you ever disclaim knowledge of something you have no knowledge of. That to me is one point here. And then the second is to know as a layperson, if you were on some medication years ago and you haven't been taking it, it'd be easy to forget that, I would think, or perceive that you don't no longer have whatever that was that you took the medication for, so you don't note it or you forgot it. And yet, you know, we also know there are cases of fraud. And those people that were like you with individual policies pay more because people were deliberately trying to get on the rolls, and our files that we got from the companies indicate that too. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do we get a balance here where people like you and your loved ones aren't rescinded from coverage and yet find this balance? And it seems to get back to the initial application process, the review of those applications, and a better understanding for those of us who may be signing up for that type of health insurance. So I'm curious, how would you fix at least that part of the process? Anyone want to tackle that?
I would just state that the insurance company, at the time you apply for insurance and you disclose your doctors, they should be the ones that have to do the investigations. If they don't do the proper investigation at the time you apply, they shouldn't have the right to go back years later. You know, there's 2 years. There's a 2-year window for the insurance companies by which they can do their investigations. No, that's wrong. They should have to investigate before they give you your insurance. They have all the opportunity to investigate then. You disclose your doctors, let them get the records, let them look at and comb the records at that time. Why are they doing that later on when
you have a big claim?
Pardon me? Absolutely. I mean, if that isn't intentional, what is? They want to save money and wait until you have claims before they spend the investigative money to do what they should do at the beginning. So all this time, they haven't done their job. They're taking the consumer's money, and the consumer thinks, I'm insured, but I'm not insured, and that's not right. That law needs to be changed.
Ms. Baton, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, just like myself, I asked, could I have a physical?
Right.
I wanted to have a
read
physical for insurance, and they said, no, we don't do that. So I even offered to let them have a physical on me, which to me, that would be a good thing. You know, that way, if there's anything they don't want, they don't have to take anything.
We have that in Medicare, I think, your entry into Medicare.
They don't do that at all. So they don't want to spend the money for a physical to give it to you, to rule you out then, so you don't get your hopes up and think you have insurance.
Okay. All right.
I completely agree with what Ms. Raddatz said, and just wanted to add, you know, after this practice happens, which hopefully we're going to stop it from happening in the first place, but then when your physicians write letters on your behalf and aid you in appealing to these insurance companies, the fact that they give no weight whatsoever to what these physicians who've been treating you for years say, it's totally unconscionable.
Yeah, I was reading through some of those examples of people who, you know, were rescinded, and their physician says the patient would have no idea of this. It's a note I put in a file I never shared with them, and that's that would be that doesn't seem right. Would it be helpful? Now I realize I've run over my time here, but would it be helpful if there were also? It seems like there's yes and no columns on these forms. Given that I don't think any of you are physicians, would it be helpful if there maybe was an unsure, don't know column as well that you could check, which then I would think if I'm the insurer would cause me to go, there may be something here I should look in further. And because, I mean, the insurers, if you read through their testimony, they make the case that, look, it's a very small percentage, although it's a very painful percentage. I'm just telling you what they're telling us. Small percentage. if we did everyone, it would slow down people getting access to insurance, blah, 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 blah. And so they're saying, you know, we go investigate those where we have cause or an issue. That's something we'll get into on the next panel. But, you know, there is this notion that it's a very small segment of the population. And so, you know, to get people covered, they go this direction.
I don't believe that it's a very small segment of the population. I believe that they send anyone who sends in a claim to this post-claims underwriting department. And I've heard many people who formerly worked from, you know, ad insurance companies talk about these secret, you know, specific units that are designed to find errors or omissions or whatever you want to call them in people's records so that they can go back and save money.
And I think we actually get some of that testimony from our final witness from Georgetown that says it may be a small percentage, but it's perhaps a big percentage of the claim costs. And real quick, Ms.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, those are the people you know of. There are many people out there who lose their insurance and then go on Medicaid, go on welfare, go without insurance. You're not aware of who those are. Those are their numbers. Right. Those aren't the consumer's numbers. We don't really know how many people are out there. And you know what? I don't care if there's just the three of us. That's too many. One too many who dies because an insurance company canceled their insurance is one too many.
Right. Ms. Baten, any final comment? If not, I just wondered if you had any final comment on that point. It's okay if you don't.
I'm real hard of hearing. What'd you say?
I just wondered if you had any final comment.
Oh, I just agree with both of what they said, and I know so many people in my cancer group that I wish could be here and talk to you that you wouldn't believe their stories. So it's common practice, and you'll never know how common it is. And when they hire nurses to investigate, who sit there their whole shift, do nothing but review medical records, looking for things to get rid of people, that just shows you right there.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent a statement from Rosa DeLauro, member, be placed in the record. Let me just ask a question. You know, we've focused sort of on what happened to you three, as we should, and rightfully so, but, you know, we found close to 20,000 cases in looking where there were rescissions over the last few years from 3 insurance companies here who will be testifying next panel. I mean, there were even people like spouse gets in a bicycle accident, has some fractured bones, and then they deny because her husband had back surgery. What bearing that had on that lady's fractures is beyond me. But that's what we're seeing. But Ms. Baten, one thing I want to ask you. In your testimony, you stated, and I'm going to quote now, that you live with fear every day of my insurance company. What are you afraid of your insurance company might do?
Without a doubt, someday they'll cancel me. Someday Mr. Barton won't be there to protect me. And, you know, I'm young, and they'll find something to get rid of me. Somehow I won't have insurance. Someday I'll be out of Blue Cross and Blue Shield's record. They'll find a way to get rid of me. And coming here today, I think I'll just about maybe do it.
So if you lost your insurance, you're afraid you'd never get insurance from another company since you've been rejected once?
If I lost my insurance, what?
Are you afraid you would not be able to pick up another individual health insurance bill?
I am uninsurable. I'm uninsurable. The only way I could ever get insurance through being a registered nurse, I could go back to work in a hospital and be covered under a group. They could not deny you that way. I've done a lot of research about that. But as far as an individual policy, from the rest of my life, I'm uninsurable.
Because of your pre-existing condition?
Because of my cancer.
Okay.
Once you have cancer, you're uninsurable forever.
Okay. Thank you. I apologize, Mr. Deal. I didn't see you there, but 5 minutes for questions.
That'll teach me to wear a light-colored suit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks. I just simply wanted to express appreciation to the witnesses for coming today. Certainly none of us condone abuses within the system, and you've pointed out some of those that appear to be in that category. And I know that it took a great deal of effort on your part to come, and we appreciate your courage and we appreciate your time that you've devoted to it. I do not have any questions of you. I think your testimony speaks for itself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Well, that was pretty quick. Any other, Greg? Well, let me thank this panel for their testimony, their heartfelt testimony, and thank you for shedding some light on this and bringing a human face to a very serious problem. We will have our next panel, but thank you all for coming, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank y'all.
Thank you very much.